For people hearing about brain code centers for the first time, how would you describe what you do in the simplest, most, I guess, human way possible?
Absolutely. Honestly, if I were to give, kind of like a 1,000-foot view, it would be operant conditioning of the brain. A lot of people describe it as rewiring the brain. So we work on anything from anxiety, depression, ADD, trauma, sleep issues, all of the above, kind of anything brain or neurologically related. And I believe that in so many ways, we feel very beholden to what we're born with, right? That, hey, I just run anxious or I just struggle with insomnia. And that really isn't the case, that the brain is absolutely capable of change, and brain mapping and neurofeedback is a way in which to elicit that change.
You're so right. I think most people are conditioned to be like, the way my brain is the way my brain
That's
is.
right.
And they think it's a static, rather than a system that could be modified or worked on. All right, welcome everyone to the Rise 41 podcast. I am your host, Gonzalo Gonzo Herrero, and today with me I have Angie, and I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Noack.
Noack, but so close. So close.
So we do what we can.
Yeah.
She is the Senior VP of Business Development over at Brain Code Centers,
Mhm.
and she will hopefully give us a great little intro. We have a few questions to show the audience what Brain Code Centers does, what your mission is, and so forth. And then we'll get into like some more specific questions as to how you do the work that you do, which is to help people in so many ways.
Sure.
So first, Angie, thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So, all right. So let's start with the easy stuff to establish some parameters for the audience. So, for people hearing about brain code centers for the first time, how would you describe what you do in the simplest, most, I guess, human way possible?
Absolutely. Honestly, if I were to give, kind of like a 1,000-foot view, it would be operant conditioning of the brain. A lot of people describe it as rewiring the brain. So we work on anything from anxiety, depression, ADD, trauma, sleep issues, all of the above, kind of anything brain or neurologically related. And I believe that in so many ways, we feel very beholden to what we're born with, right? That, hey, I just run anxious or I just struggle with insomnia. And that really isn't the case, that the brain is absolutely capable of change, and brain mapping and neurofeedback is a way in which to elicit that change.
You're so right. I think most people are conditioned to be like, the way my brain is the way my brain
That's
is.
right.
And they think it's a static, rather than a system that
Yeah.
could be modified or
Mhm.
or worked on. So okay, so the core mission. Let's talk about the core mission and or the philosophy behind the brain code centers.
Yeah.
And why does this type of work matter right now more than ever, in your opinion?
Oh my gosh. So I was reading a statistic a while ago that talked about, like, per capita, we have more counselors and more mental health and more kind of information available, yet we are the sickest and the most mentally unwell as a culture than we ever have been. So what is the disconnect right there, right? And I believe that in so many ways we are conditioned to take more medication. And let me just preface, there's no shame in the medication game. Like, we do what we have to do. But I believe that we live in a culture and live in a time where we're kind of Amazon Prime, right? Like, I want it right now, right?
Yeah.
We're the Ozempic era where it's like, I want to, lose 50 pounds yesterday. And at the end of the day, in a lot of ways, like, what's the natural approach, right? I believe that our brains are capable of doing things on their own. They just don't know how to do it yet, and as a culture, we also try to kind of focus very heavily neck down, that if I eat right and if I work out and I do these things, then I am well. And a lot of times, we still aren't, that our brains are not doing what they should for us. So we struggle with anxiety and depression and sleep and, all these other things. And really,
Sure.
our mission is to bring life transformation information change to people through neurological balance. And that really is, what neurofeedback and brain code centers, our passion is. So, yes, I believe in the power of talk therapy. I'm a clinical mental health counselor. Yes, I believe that medication can be life saving. And also, neurofeedback and brain mapping should be a part of the conversation. And it isn't necessarily yet. It is in some circles, and probably more in the biohacking and wellness circles, it is. But I
Mhm.
would say culturally across the board, it's not. I still walk into rooms where there are people who haven't even heard of it. And so that
Right.
really is our passion, and our mission is to make sure that everybody knows that it's at least an option.
Okay, so following that, so how did the Brain Code Center actually get started? Was it just a
Yeah.
group of you got together and, what was there a specific problem perhaps
Yeah.
that you guys got together to solve?
That's a great question. So, my best friend and business partner, Rachel Lambert, was actually diagnosed bipolar at 17 years old. And she'd be comfortable with me telling you this. We are very open about, kind of our stories. She was wild, doing wild stuff, getting arrested, like, just doing all these things. And her parents are a lot more functional wellness based. And we're going, oh my gosh, like, what the heck is going on? Right.
Right.
She grew up in a pretty secure attachment environment, but was just off the charts doing a lot of things. And so they said, hey, listen, we cannot send you to college like this, right? That you're going to
Right.
end up dead or in jail again. And so it was kind of, hey, either we need to go on medication, right? That's one route, or let's go try this brain mapping neurofeedback thing that we heard about that could help. And, Rachel said, hey, I guess I want to try, neurofeedback, that, kind of Hail Mary, let's see what happens. And it completely transformed her life. That she has never had to be medicated. If you look at her
Wow.
brain mapping pattern now, it does not show a pattern for bipolar any longer. And she's extremely stable. So that kind of, started her passion for going, oh my gosh, I have to bring this to other people. And then, probably 5 years, down the line. So she went and got her master's, started doing neurofeedback.
Mhm.
I kind of, back up a little bit. At 19, I suffered a skull fracture traumatic brain injury from kind of a random, weird accident. And
Okay.
that left me in a walker for a while and having some really severe cognitive deficits. And fortunately, Carolyn Noack, my mom was crunchy before it was cool to be crunchy. And, when doctors were kind of saying, hey, this might be as good as it's going to get, she said, we
Right.
will never accept that answer. No, thank you. And was looking for alternative forms of medicine that truly brought me ultimate healing. And even, 10 years down the line, I still was dealing with some severe anxiety and some pretty severe insomnia. And neurofeedback was incredibly impactful and changed my brain in some very profound ways. So Rachel and I, honestly, I feel like the Lord brought us together as we have similar
Sure.
passions and we're similarly minded. And then through working together, we became best friends and, kind of started this journey of like, how do we bring this to everyone, right? That how do we
Wow.
allow more people to know what this is and to bring them hope?
That's amazing, actually. So, is there a particular client or person that Brain Code Centers is designed to help?
Yeah.
Would it be like, would your typical client be somebody who's like struggling, somebody who might be just optimizing? Could it
Yeah.
be both?
It is absolutely both. Yes. I would say a
Okay.
majority of people that we see are probably struggling, right? That unfortunately, we tend to wait till something's wrong to be
Yeah.
proactive, right? We're going, oh my gosh, I
It's
am
human
in.
nature.
Yeah,
It's
that's
human
human
nature.
nature, right? Like, hey, could I fix it before it starts? Yes. Could I wait until it breaks? Probably more likely. So
It's
we
more
see a
fun
lot of
that way.
people, yeah, who are on the back end who are really struggling and going, gosh, I was desperate and I was Googling, other options for X, Y, and Z, and neurofeedback came up. Now, I also do work with peak performance CEOs, professional athletes who are like, I'm already top 1%. I just want to be that 1% better. What is
Right.
that? Where
Yeah.
where's kind of that edge going to come from? Because if I'm equally matched to these other people or these other athletes from a talent standpoint, where's my edge coming from? And that really is,
Right.
neurological, that if we can get into and stay in and sustain flow state and be more focused and have a little bit better reaction time, you are the better athlete. So it's
Right.
both, it's really anyone who, has a brain and is capable is and wants brain optimization or more wellness. That really is who we're here to serve.
That whole idea of relentless improvement, right? No matter how good you are, you can always try and be better
Oh,
and
that's
just
exactly right.
continue.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Cool. All right. So here's starting with the fun questions. for the so your work revolves around neurofeedback and brain optimization
Yes.
in essence.
Mhm.
Is there a misconception about brain health that you wish in the world would finally let die?
There's first off, probably the biggest misconception is that, I mean, even 30 years ago, we believed that the brain stopped being neuroplastic at age 30. Like,
Oh, okay.
plasticity was done. Like,
Yeah.
you were just it was
Yeah.
downhill from
This is
there.
it.
Oh gosh, and that's been disproven 100 times over that our brains are always neuroplastic. I treat people into their 80s who are like, "Hey, I just want to keep my brain fresh and I just want to, make sure that my best asset, my brain, is always being flexed and being utilized." So that's a big misconception that you're kind of what you're born with is what you're beholden to and then it's downhill from
Right.
there. So that I also feel like sometimes when people see what we do, there's a misconception of that it's not natural, that we're shocking the brain, that it's like ECT or like, transcranial magnetic stimulation. Not that there's anything wrong with those things, but it's very
Mhm.
different. We are not putting any stim into the brain. So probably let me back up and do a little bit of like what is, brain mapping
Sure.
and neurofeedback so we can make sure that everybody's on the same page.
Sure.
So brain mapping is operant conditioning of the brain, right? It is reward training. We're teaching the brain to create new neural pathways. So we do start with that qEEG. It's a quantitative electroencephalogram, similar to an EEG or a SPECT image, except that we're not only looking for something structural, right? It's not that we won't see it. If somebody's had a concussion or a brain injury, we are going to see it. It's just that that is not the only thing that we're looking for. We're looking at, the electrical and the neurological wave activity happening. And all humans are capable of producing the same brain waves. So this is the lens to which we see it. Delta,
Mhm.
deep, slow sleep, theta, drifting into sleep. Alpha
Yep.
is a receptor that moves the brain around, beta, clean energy, high beta, fight or flight. We need all of them, right? If we're being chased
Right.
by a bear, high beta is critical because it tells us, like, holy cow,
Go.
get the heck
Go.
out of here. Yeah.
Mhm.
If you're trying to go to sleep at night and your brain is lit with high beta, that's pretty uncomfortable, right? If you're
Right.
trying to be focused and motivated and your brain is producing a lot of slow theta, not going to serve us well. So that's what we're
Gotcha.
looking to see. And the beautiful thing about Brain Code Centers, we have a fully in-person program and a fully remote program. So it does not matter if someone lives near one of our offices. I can treat people across the world with our remote program. So if you live anywhere, you can do neurofeedback with us. So either we ship you equipment to do the brain map, you come in and do the brain map, we analyze that data, discuss it with you, and then we create a treatment plan so that every time you either put on your remote headset to do sessions or you come in office, you're doing the neurofeedback operant conditioning training. And people will always have a visual and an auditory form of reward. So if that's on the app on your phone, you're watching something and listening to something. If you're in my office, you have headphones on and you have a screen. What you are experiencing is very it's all reward based, right? So it's all visual and auditory forms of reward. Think about if you're trying to train a puppy to sit, right? You're not
Right.
gonna, you tell it to sit, you give it a treat, you repeat the behavior, it repeats the behavior because it wants the reward.
Right.
Eventually we can take away the treat and it still knows how to sit, as now that's a new neurological highway. That is what we're doing with neurofeedback. That when your brain is producing the wave activity that we're asking for, only the wave activity that we're asking for. So, what I've plugged in on the back end, is it
Mhm.
receiving that novelty stimulus, those little hits of dopamine, therefore ingraining those new neural pathways to permanency? And we do those things enough times over time that we commit them to permanency. So, the idea neurofeedback is not, even though I related a lot to working out, unlike working
Mhm.
out, if we do those things enough times over time, they're there to stay. So it's not something that you should have to maintain forever. This is like riding a bike. You learn it once and then your brain has it forever.
And then you're good.
Yep,
Wow. That's pretty cool. That's very cool.
absolutely.
So, wow. Let's see. So, most people think, let's talk about burnout,
Hmm.
which is very common.
Absolutely.
So, most people think burnout is just being like tired,
Yeah.
but from your vantage point, what's happening neurologically when someone hits that wall? When people are talking about, like, I need to deal and work with burnout at work, burnout with the family, with
Yeah.
the spouse.
Absolutely.
What's your view on this?
It kind of depends on the type of burnout. So if we have more, so I work a lot with first responders, right? Fire, police. That type of burnout that I tend to see looks more like excess high beta. So that's more PTSD. That person has been running in fight or flight for so long that they're overstimulated, they're reactive. It's like maybe they're a really good first responder, but they go home and yell at their kids and they're like, what
Right.
is going on? Why am I doing this? I don't want to, because their brain has been trained to sit there. I also see people who probably were going so hard for so long that now they're producing a lot of excess delta wave activity. That is literally like you've been driving your car so fast for so long, it's shut down. It's puttering on fumes. Now we're dealing with cortisol overdrive, metabolic issues happening in the brain. So they feel just exhausted. Like they have no motivation. They can't, they're brain foggy, they're lethargic, all these other things because their
Yeah.
brain is swimming in sleep wave activity all the time. But they probably also have insomnia. So there's, it depends on the type of burnout that we're talking about, but those are patterns that I tend to see. And honestly, it's kind of a badge of honor for our culture in the weirdest way that, oh, you work more hours. Oh, you sleep
Yeah.
less. Oh, you
Hmm.
grind so hard. You're such a badass. And like, cool, you win, right? You're the winner. Now you're
Right. Right.
exhausted. Now you're having a stroke at 40. Now you're, so
Yikes.
unwell, all these things. It's like, who's the winner here? That I don't believe actually in work-life balance, like unpopular opinion. I don't think that's a real thing. I do
Mhm.
believe in mental wellness integration. I believe that we have to be integrating wellness practices into our daily life because if we're trying to separate, I want to be successful and do all those things and I only want to work till 4:30 and I want to have every weekend off. That's not real in my opinion. But
Right.
what can we be doing while we're grinding and doing all these things to make sure that we're taking care of our body and our brain?
Love it. Love it. So let's see. So Breakout Center specializes in individualized brain mapping, right? Is
Yes.
that correct?
Mhm.
So have you ever seen a surprising pattern uh as far as like a comparison between your high performers you mentioned before
Yeah.
and your general population? Like is there something there that you might want to comment about or
Oh man, so one thing that I love, Rachel and I always joke that when we meet really high performing people, we always guess. Where I was like, "Oh, I wonder what their brain looks like," and we make guesses, and
Mhm.
then, I would say 90% of the time we're right, right? Like, we know, "Oh, beta on the cingulate," "Oh, fast alpha brain." I
Right.
think it's so interesting when brains surprise me. So, I've worked with several capital B billionaires. Like, these people are the top 1% of the 1%, and I'm thinking of somebody specifically who I worked with for a long time who I just would have bet all my money that this dude was all fast, just tons of fast wave
Mhm.
activity. He was all slow wave activity, had a slower processing speed, a lot of
Really
slow wave. I was like, I was so surprised. But
interesting.
it was the most interesting pattern I've ever seen, and actually, I've seen that in a lot of, like, the wealthiest. I'm not gonna say the most successful because that would depend on how we define success. The
Right.
wealthiest people I've ever met have excess slow wave activity and more of a pattern of and I'm not diagnosing them, but what I would
Mhm.
consider to be, like, autism spectrum, and kind of this
Interesting.
interesting different pattern, and so, I mean, that's just observational Angie data, that's not like a clinical trial. But it's
Right.
so interesting, and especially when I first started seeing it, I was like, "Huh, I just would have expected something else." So it's a very interesting pattern.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay, so let's see. Kind of keeping with the whole like exploring the space.
yeah,
Is there a one breakthrough or in neuroscience, maybe or neurofeedback, that you believe is underrated or under discussed that people should be more aware of? Can you think of something that
yeah.
if people were more aware of, they'd be more, I don't know, more cognizant or more willing to work on?
Yeah. So actually a lot of this is probably and it is neurofeedback, but it's also just wellness in general. I believe
Uh-huh.
that people believe that they don't have control over certain things. Oh, I have a family
Okay.
history of Alzheimer's. That probably just going to be me. Oh, I have a family history of dementia. Oh, everybody in my family has high blood pressure. Everybody in my family has diabetes. Like 99% of these things are absolutely preventable. What is it
Right.
that Alzheimer's is like diabetes for? Or like, no,
Right.
sorry,
I've heard
diabetes 3 or
this.
whatever, that it's like if you
Hmm.
have unchecked glucose, blood sugar for so long, like the odds that you are going to have these neurodegenerative issues like rises so much. There, one of my favorite
Right.
books of all time is called Glucose Revolution, and it talks about how we all should be thinking about blood sugar and about glucose regulation all the time. Whether or not you have ever had any type of glucose issues, I believe that our culture is on a glucose roller coaster just 24/7, and that unchecked over time will create neurological issues. Even it's creating neurological issues now. So I think that people feel very a victim of their circumstances. Like, oh, this is
Gotcha.
what it's always been, so this is what it will be. I know that you were saying that your story is that of like obesity and addiction and things like that. And
Yeah.
oh well, my family has a history of addiction, so that's just my story. No, no, like personal responsibility, that we are responsible for our bodies. And I believe that when we looked at like the Human Genome Project, that actually having like biology is like 5%, that the rest of it
Right.
is nature, right? Or nurture, what we're doing to ourselves, what we're ingesting, all these different things. So I believe that if our culture understood more that we have way more personal responsibility and we have way more control, I believe that we would want to take more heed of that.
I love it. Okay, so let's see. So, kind of following the whole idea of PTSD and trauma
Yeah.
and chronic stress.
Mhm.
So, how do those show up on a brain map?
Oh
Like,
man, yeah.
more importantly, what does effective healing actually look like?
Yeah.
Through your lens. Like, what do
Mhm.
you see?
So here's prolonged stress, PTSD, is generally, I see it in fast wave activity. I see it in
Okay.
excess beta and high beta. Now, how it manifests for people is where I'm going to see it in the brain. If somebody has panic attacks, more visceral,
Hmm.
somatic body style panic attacks, I tend to see it more in the occipital area. If someone has more like adult, like trauma, PTSD, tend to see it more in the prefrontal cortex. So I tend to see a lot of different patterns for anxiety, PTSD for trauma. Early developmental trauma looks a certain way, later adult trauma looks a certain way. So we can definitely distinguish between that. But often I see a lot of fast wave activity. Now, I would
Okay.
love, wouldn't it be so cool if healing, wellness was like a silver bullet, right? One and
Yeah.
done. It's not. So a lot of times I'm talking to people about multiple facets. Like, hey, yes, we have to deal with, your brain health. Let's do neurofeedback. And
Right.
also, what's your sleep pattern like? Your circadian rhythm? Are you staring at your phone until the second you go to bed? Are you
Yeah.
overstimulating your brain and doom scrolling on social media for hours a day? Is neurofeedback magic and gonna all of a sudden change all of those things? Do you, slam 5 shots of Jack before you go to bed because that's the only way that you can shut off your brain? So, yes, there are a lot of things that we can do, and I believe that's a huge component. There are also other puzzle pieces that have to be set into place. So usually, when I'm talking to people, I'm talking about a holistic wellness plan and probably bringing in other people who are amazing in their field, like, natural, wellness doctors, things like that, to make sure that we are healing the body holistically, not just from one perspective.
Makes sense. Let's see. So in our world of the human optimization space, let's say, there's a lot of hype stuff, with like nootropics and red lights and
Yeah.
neurostimulation devices and all these things, these modalities. Which of these trends do you find have like some solid, you feel like have some real science behind them,
Mhm.
and which ones make you like roll your eyes like, oh boy?
Yeah.
Are there any favorites there?
For sure. I love red light therapy. I love it. But be wary of, what you're purchasing. You know what I mean? That like
Right.
unfortunately high quality red light is expensive. It's not
Yes.
inexpensive. So if your red light therapy that you bought off of Amazon for $20, like reality is it's probably not strong enough to be actually creating any type of change. I
Yeah.
love sauna. Cold plunge is an interesting one. I actually think cold plunging is fantastic for women. It needs to be during certain types of your cycle, or it's actually creating even more stress and putting too much on your body, as well as women should not be cold plunging nearly as cold as men can cold plunge. So men are on a
Interesting.
24-hour hormone cycle, women are on a 30-day hormone cycle.
Right.
That's a very
Mhm.
different situation. So sometimes in the biohacking world, women are like, I'll just biohack like men. Nah, you got to biohack for
Yeah.
women. It just
Yeah. Some
looks a
people
little
are
bit
like
different.
treat women as like little men It's like,
Yeah,
no,
like,
no,
I'm
no,
just a
it's
little
completely
man.
different.
No, you're
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
No, you're
it's
like,
completely
yeah,
different.
your biology, you are completely different. Like, hormonally, you are completely different, and you just have to know that. Things that make me roll my eyes are all in, like, diet trends, right? Like,
Okay.
"Oh, keto," or what's it? Carnivore. Like, I just eat meat all the
Yeah.
time. Get out of here with that. Like, no, no, ma'am. And I know people are like, oh, I found, so much change with it. That is so good for you. I do not believe that is not healthy and that is not wellness, right? And long
Yeah.
time over time, like we need vegetables. I'm sorry, who's the guy who's like, oh, broccoli's bullshit? You're bullshit, bro. Like the amount of
Yeah.
broccoli that you would need to eat to actually be poisoned the way in which you're telling people it is, I think is
Yeah.
so misinformation and honestly just lies. So get the frick out of here with that.
Yeah.
Things that I also do believe in are mycotoxins, right? That if we are using toxic, dishwash or clothing detergent, these different things that are endocrine disruptors, those
Hmm.
are also things that I do believe in. Now, be wary of what you're buying, make sure that you're following, certain, or if you're following influencers or something, make sure that their science is sound. Courtney Swan, The Real Foodology, is an amazing podcast that I've spoken on and someone who I know well
Hmm.
and deeply trust. So for people who are like, where do I even get the right information? She is spot on. So
Okay.
I would follow her into time. She's incredible. But anything that's kind of one size fit all diet wise is not for me.
Right. No, it makes sense. And a lot of those diets are just they're in a way elimination diets. They're just eliminating
That's
a
right.
macro or a type of food or whatever. And then,
They're not
you
teaching
know,
healthy eating habits, that's for darn sure.
exactly. Your relationship with food is not going to be particularly healthy if you follow a lot of these, unfortunately.
No. And your
So, or
body needs
balance.
carbohydrates. Like,
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
brain needs carbohydrates to
Yeah.
function.
A lot of people don't even realize like carbohydrates are actually like muscle sparing. They always go like, oh, you're going to get fat. It's like, not if you exercise and do the right
For
things,
sure.
you know?
Carbohydrates create serotonin in the brain. So, like,
Right.
be happy,
Right.
eat carbs. Now, don't
Yeah.
eat trash carbs. You know what I mean? Like, people associate
Right.
carbohydrates with chips. Okay, you're right. Smashing a bag of chips, probably not it. But healthy, complex carbohydrates are so good and so necessary for body health and brain health.
Sure. Like the combination that I found, at least in my experience, was when you put in those carbohydrates with fats together, that's where you
Oh, yeah.
run into now you run into trouble
Yeah.
because now you've got a high caloric input and you've got fats ready to be stored because the carbohydrates are doing the glycogen piece.
That's right.
So where are the fats going to go? They have to go somewhere.
For sure.
So,
Yeah.
so when you combine those two together, oh boy,
Yeah.
but there's a subtlety to that, or a nuance that it's kind of lost, unfortunately, in a lot of people,
Yeah.
and the things that are most delicious are the things that are carbs and fats together.
I
So,
mean, like what makes things taste good? Like
yeah,
fats, right? Like,
carbs and fats.
yeah,
Yeah.
a dry piece of chicken, nah. Like
No, yeah.
that makes
Chicken
things taste
thigh
really
is
good.
always better than a chicken breast,
Always
that's
going
for
to be
sure.
better. So you need those things, right? You need
Yeah.
complex carbohydrates within reason, right? But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm a eat the rainbow, eat a lot of different types of foods. That's where interest comes from, and that's where healthy eating patterns come from.
Okay. All right. So just a couple more questions and we're out of here.
Heck yeah,
So another one that might be interesting for the group is you work with clearly with clients that are from like kids to high level executives, like you
that's right.
mentioned, and everybody in between. Can you see a pattern or what separates people who succeed, right? With the protocols from those who might struggle a little bit. Are there certain patterns or behaviors or types that you've identified maybe,
Yeah.
or tendencies perhaps in people?
So
Um,
I would say again, like how do we define success? How do we define succeeding? As one person might say, I am not successful unless I am the boss. And someone else say, I
uh,
am not successful if I'm not helping people. So that definitely depends. But high performing individuals, I do see a lot of patterns, right? So I do see a lot of people, high performing executives often I would say 99% of the time have beta on the cingulate. So
Okay.
beta is your flow state. It's your motivational wave activity, and your cingulate, your interior cingulate,
Hmm.
is right along the top ridge of the brain. So when I meet successful people, I'm like, I know I'm going to see some beta on your cingulate. You're fast
Right.
processing. You're able to see things almost from a different vantage point, right? Where you create ideas and you can bring people along with you to buy into those ideas. But it also
Right.
depends on what area are we looking at. If I look at a clinic of counselors, I'm going to see probably some excess theta. I'm going to see some excess alpha wave activity, a little bit more calm demeanor, ability to have empathy and see people and feel people, right? So, but that is how they would gauge success, is being able to be
Right.
deep feelers and deep thinkers versus go, go, go all the time, hit it. Yeah. First
Yeah.
responders, I also tend to see some excess theta patterns. That's the first responder that I want running into my burning building, is somebody who
Yeah.
is in a high intense situation and is calm as a freaking cucumber, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Who can go, okay, this is what we're doing. We're doing one,
yeah.
two, three,
So this
four.
one
We're out.
is
Go.
do this. Oh, I want that's my first responder, right? I
Yeah.
don't want panicky Joe over here. Like, don't send him in.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it totally depends, but I do tend to see, depending on what people do or the career patterns that they choose to have, I tend to see different patterns. People who really struggle, right? People who call me and are like, I just cannot get motivated. I cannot get organized, right? Who have diagnosed themselves with 15 different things. I must have ADHD. I must have this. I must have that. That can come from a lot of different patterns. That can come from brain fog. That can come from excess theta and lack of focus and motivation. That can come from way too much fast wave activity, where you are straight analysis paralysis. You are so anxious that you
Yeah.
you can't get moving because it's so anxiety provoking to think about doing it. So, but
Right.
that's also a beautiful thing to validate people, but then to have a plan like, okay, here's what's going on. I do validate why you feel the way that you feel, but here's what we're going to do moving forward to change that.
Right. And then that's the trick right there. So, which leads to my another question somewhat related, which is, so if someone is dealing with, like, say, that anxiety or brain fog,
Yeah.
um let's or a poor focus, let's say,
Mhm.
what steps should they take before they turn to medical intervention? Are there any steps you could recommend
Yeah.
to kind of like mitigate a little bit? Or would you say, no, let's go straight to the medical intervention and
So,
work?
I'll never go straight to medical intervention when it comes to, like, taking meds, just because that's not in within my value proposition. That's not within my wheelhouse.
Uh-huh.
Some people, who are like meds all the way, that might be theirs, right? And there's no shame in the medication game. But again, I'm very much that I believe our brains are capable of change. So for someone with anxiety, if let's take neurofeedback off the table, as neurofeedback
Right.
always going to be my number one. Let's take that off the table. If somebody is dealing with some really severe, anxiety, let's talk about, do we have a trauma history? Would doing some EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization, it's a form of trauma therapy. Would that be helpful?
Okay.
Has that person, done a lot of other things? Have we done any blood work and, like, supplements? Have you done any natural medicine to see what's going on from a hormone perspective? If someone is really struggling with, focus and motivation, have they done any breath work? Have they also, yeah, have they done any blood work? That's a great place to start to see if your hormones are deeply out of whack. Like, we need to get that in check, no matter what. What are your sleep
Gotcha.
habits like? If you're running on 4 hours of sleep every night and expecting your brain to show up and work well for you, no shot.
It's not going to work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no way.
Yes.
So
So you definitely take that holistic view of, like, it's
always
not just it's the brain and all the other systems that work with it.
everything works
So,
together 100%. So like I said, for some people, we are the final piece to that puzzle. They have done everything else. They're working on all the things. And it's like, dang, I really still struggle with X, Y, and Z. Fire it up. Let's neurofeedback this. For other
yeah.
people, it's like, man, we probably have a couple things to set in place to make sure that you have holistic, long term healing.
Gotcha. Okay. And so, thinking about, where do you see the future of neurofeedback and brain health going, say, in the next, what do you think about the next now thinking the future, 5 to 10 years.
Mhm.
Is there something coming that people might not be even ready for, like that you see in your
Yeah.
field? Because you guys are very forward thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys are at the bleeding edge of this, of this. I hesitate to call it technology, but of
Yeah.
this knowledge area,
Modality. That's right.
modality.
Yeah.
Love that word. Yes.
I believe, I mean, even in the last 10 years, neurofeedback has become so much more streamlined, right? That if in 10 years ago, I walked into a room and was like, has anyone heard of brain mapping and neurofeedback? And maybe one person. Now I would say 50
Right.
to 70% are like, oh, I've heard of it. Well, so it's not even that I think we're going to have the most cutting edge of technology changes, but I believe that it will be so much more accessible. We're fighting with insurance to make sure that it's covered
Yeah.
and covered in a way that practitioners will actually get decent reimbursement, right? That, right now people are like, why don't you take insurance? Because insurance is deeply unenjoyable to work with. They don't reimburse where anyone could even have a living wage, right? So I believe that we will
Gotcha.
have it more streamlined where people can get it covered by their insurance and have it be a part of the conversation where doctors, your primary care physician is like, hey, yes, we could try medication. Yes, we could try counseling. Why don't you try this brain mapping neurofeedback? So I believe that that is what is coming down the pipeline. Now, I might have way too high of an opinion of our, medical system, but I have friends who are primary care physicians, who are neurologists, who refer to us. I just think we need to get enough people on board with this type of modality that we can make it more accessible to everyone.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay. And now, in closing, like the last question. So, would you share with us your plans for the future for the center and you? Like what's coming? What is something that gets you excited? Is there like what's the future look like for you guys specifically?
Yes. So
Any projects you want to like share with the audience? Anything like that?
absolutely. So right now we have offices, like brick and mortar locations in Denver, Colorado, and kind of the surrounding suburbs, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and in Dallas, Texas. And I definitely get asked, like, where's the next center that you're opening? Honestly, with how popular and how incredible and successful and efficacious the remote program is, I don't think we'll open another brick and mortar location, just because, I mean, big overhead, like higher price points.
No, we have
So
the technology, right? Look,
that's
look at
right.
us talking right here.
Oh, we have the
you know?
technology where you can do it from anywhere. I mean, I have, clients training with us in Dubai, so when we can
Wow.
do it from anywhere. So I believe that we will continue to grow the remote program and have it be, I would love to see, a remote headset on every continent in every single country. For
Yeah.
myself personally, a couple of years ago, Rachel and I sat down and kind of said, how can we continue to have bigger impact, right? Like, we do all the consultations for brain code centers, which are 100% free, but we started keynote speaking, and that is a huge passion of ours. I want to grow that, where I'd love to be speaking on big stages twice a month. Not
Yeah.
only because that fills my cup in a really profound way, also because that's a larger opportunity to offer hope. That, again, I do, I speak in front of thousands of people, and I have hundreds of people come to me and go, I didn't even know that this was a thing. Thank you for your willingness to share your testimony. So that's something for me personally that gets me so excited, is being able to speak to larger and larger and larger audiences and to really hone and refine that craft. So in the next few years, like, darn me to say, like, expect to see me on bigger stages. Like, I'm coming.
Love that. I love that. So, Angie, thank you so much for your time and for this amazing explanation. And I'm hoping that our audience will find this as a simple introduction into
Yes,
this modality and the possibilities that they may not have been aware of, right? Of
that's right.
opportunities for self improvement, healing, moving forward from trauma and from difficult situations.
Yes.
I know that personally, I'm very, very intrigued after what we've spoken about. So, in closing, thank you so much for this.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And if people are curious, they can pop on our website, braincodecenters.com. They can find us on Instagram at braincodecenters. Shoot us a DM. We'd love to talk to you. We'd love to schedule a free consultation and just get to know you a little bit better and do, more education on kind of that one-on-one level.
Yeah, and for the audience, I will have all of this information in the comments and the liner notes
Perfect.
of the episode in YouTube as well as Instagram,
Yeah.
so that you can reach out to Angie and her team, because I really feel that you guys can and do make a difference for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And the more people are aware of this, the more difference you can make and the more people you can help,
Heck yeah.
which is nothing but positive.
Yes.
So again, thank you so much, and have a wonderful day. Everyone, thank you. If you found this information useful, like I said, all of it will be in the comments. And please like, subscribe, hit the bell, do all the things, and share this with your friends. There might be a lot of your friends that can benefit from this information. So with that being said, thank you everyone, and have a wonderful day.